Alrighty. Are we good? I think we're good. I'm just going to go on and check real quick because I had this issue where I thought I was, and yep, it says we are live. Thank goodness. My apologies for Sunday night. I don't know what happened. I was positive that it went live. It showed that it went live on my end, but apparently it just didn't. But based on how Sunday Night Football went, that was for the better. It was definitely thank God y'all didn't see that. That was definitely my worst stream I ever did because it was a rough sit through. I was losing my mind towards the end of that game. I felt like I just wanted to die after that. But that is in the past. Seems like we got it all figured out. And ladies and gentlemen, week 1 is officially in the books. Oh wait, I forgot. We're live. I forgot to do the intro. Hey, yo! What is good, all of you beautiful people out there? How are y'all doing today? That is fantastic. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the Double Diesel Sports Podcast, where we talk about everything National Football League, in season, off season. It doesn't matter because it's football, and football is back, baby. Oh, it feels so good. Week 1 is officially in the books, like I said, and there is a lot to talk about. You know, relatively sloppy football from this first week. Week 1s usually are, starters don't usually play in the preseason, so it takes about a week or two to get them back into a rhythm and playing at the level that we anticipate these teams playing at. And you know what? I just had a rundown of the games I wanted to talk about. But after the news that broke about an hour or so ago, I decided, you know what, I'm just going to talk about this now. I'm just going to go straight to Monday Night Football from last night. And what a game. First of all, what a game it was. It didn't look like it was going to be that great of a game through the first 3 quarters, but that fourth quarter and overtime was so exciting to watch. And I'm going to talk about Buffalo first. And I'll talk about Buffalo first before I get into the whole thing with the New York Jets. So the Buffalo Bills came into this season like they have the past couple of years as the team to beat in the AFC East. It looked like it was going to be a bloodbath in the AFC East this year. And it's kind of been up and down as far as the teams have how they looked. But Buffalo especially. I don't know what has happened to Josh Allen last night. Granted, he was going against a stellar New York Jet defense. That defense is a legitimate Super Bowl caliber defense. They were not letting anything get by them. They were swarming Josh Allen. It was an incredible defensive performance. But at the same time, Josh Allen was doing stuff that we haven't seen him do really since his rookie. Like, honest to God, Josh Allen looked like rookie Josh Allen. He looked that bad last night. The first couple quarters, it was kind of like hit or miss here and there. He was still ripping off some big runs. He still looked like the elite Josh Allen that we have been accustomed to seeing. But that second half was one of the most brutal second halves I've ever seen an offense go through. And Josh Allen was the reason why that was such a brutal second half for the Buffalo Bills. He was throwing just some weird bonehead. Like, he threw 3 interceptions in last night's game. 2 of them were basically arm punts. The first 2 that was, and all 3 of them were to the same defender, Jordan Whitehead. Threw 3 picks, all of them to the same guy, and 2 of them were just on fuck it, somebody's down there balls. Especially that first one where it was basically a borderline punt. And he just chucked it deep like 50 yards, and Jordan Whitehead was the only guy in the vicinity of it. And I don't know what happened with Josh Allen. That's one of those things where it's like you kind of have to live with, the boneheaded things, because the plays he does make, the great plays he makes, are so great where you kind of have to be like, all right, you get the good with the bad, but last night it was much more bad than good. So we'll see. It was only week one. We'll see if he gets out of that. But we saw that a little last year where, like, as the season wore on, his efficiency dropped a little bit. He was getting a little more careless with the football. And last night proved that. So we'll see. It was a tough loss for Buffalo. The Jets, their starting quarterback goes down, and it was their game for the taking, and they looked outclassed. They looked like they couldn't do anything. Even if they were able to pull out the win there in the end, they did not deserve to win that football game. But now let's talk about the thing. It was the big story from last night, and it's the big story this morning. The thing that was feared to have happened after last night's game has been, Robert Saleh talked about how with Aaron Rodgers going down, he said he feared that it was some sort of Achilles injury. And about an hour ago, when I was getting ready, getting set up, it was confirmed. Per Tom Pelissero and per Ian Rappaport, Aaron Rodgers has officially suffered a torn Achilles and is out for the remainder of the 2023 NFL season. I've always sort of joked that, being a Patriot fan and not liking the Jets and, always getting a kick out of watching Jets fans, be mad or be upset. But this one just is different. You feel bad because there was so much optimism. You saw it from the entire offseason. You saw it through Hard Knocks. You saw, this team just felt different. The energy around the team just felt different. The environment, the culture just felt different. And it all started the second Aaron Rodgers walked into that building. And it was just this complete overhaul of, hey, we are a great football team and we're going to win. And there were legitimate Super Bowl aspirations attached to this team. And it wasn't hard to see why. This is a good football team that now had a legit future Hall of Famer elite quarterback. And 4 plays. Honestly, 4 offensive plays into the season. It's all gone. Like I said, they had Super Bowl hopes. They were Super Bowl favorites. That's all gone now. They're not winning the Super Bowl this year. Hell, with the AFC, there's a chance that they might not even make the playoffs potentially. Because you saw it last year. Really, you look at last night's game, you're like, well, this is a great defense. And Breece Hall looks insane, by the way. I felt like he was getting 20-plus yards every time he touched the football. This looked like a Super Bowl caliber team. Hell, it looked like a team that could compete for a Super Bowl last year. But they failed to miss the playoffs. Why? Because the quarterback play wasn't good. Zach Wilson, who, guess what, Jet fans? It's time to run it back with Zach Wilson. He's now going to be the de facto QB1 for the remainder of the year. And it's so deflating because, and again, last night, it was a close game that the Jets won in overtime off an Xavier Gibson walk-off punt return touchdown. It was an incredible game. Like I said, Breece Hall was amazing. The defense was incredible. Garrett Wilson is a certified him. That touchdown catch, which was a bad throw by Zach Wilson, by the way, where he basically had to be the defender. That touchdown catch was incredible. It was incredible. But, it was a great win where it was a great moment, and it was an amazing feeling to get a Week 1 win. When was the last time you saw the Jets win a game in Week 1? Despite all that, Jets fans are still waking up this morning feeling defeated because they know, and we all know, their hopes of doing anything significant this year probably just went down the drain within 4 offensive snaps. And it's one of those freak things where it's like, when you see the play when it initially happened, it didn't look like it was anything serious. And I always say, like, it's the ones that don't look that scary initially that end up being the scariest. And when you initially see that, you're like, well, I don't know what exactly happened. And then you see doctors analyzing it. You see close-ups of it where you could see, like, it's so deflating. And it's so depressing to see a team with that much hope and have it get stripped from them that instant. It's a curse. Jets fans are calling it a curse. It's a curse, like, you hear, I don't know if any of you have heard the story of Joe Namath when when the Jets beat the Baltimore Colts in Super Bowl III. The whole story was the Jets won that game because Joe Namath sold his soul to the devil, where he made a deal with the story goes, he made a deal with the devil where he said, hey, devil, if you give the Jets this Super Bowl win, you don't have to give the Jets anything else for as long as I live. That's the story. As each year and each day goes along, the more I think that story might be true. Because it's like, how many times can this team be lifted up only to be just dropped on their heads? How many times is this team going to just constantly get kicked in the balls every single year? It's like Jets fans aren't allowed to feel happy. It's like they're not allowed to feel good. Like that game, they should be happy after that game. Jets fans should feel elated. Like they were feeling, I can't imagine being a Jets fan and the emotional roller coaster that they went through in that game. And even into this morning. I can't imagine it. It's rare that you see a fan base feel depressed after a win, but this is why. Because they know their season's most likely over. Because Zach Wilson, yeah, he led a nice touchdown drive at the end, but like I said, the touchdown pass wasn't a good one. And even then, like, the offense didn't look good with Zach Wilson in there. They weren't able to move the ball that well unless Breece Hall was breaking off 20-yard runs, which he has the ability to do that, which shows that, hey, his knee is perfectly fine, but you can't rely on that consistently. So it's sad, it's unfortunate, and they're in a rough. Let me look this up real quick. As far as what the Jets' schedule is for the remaining year. Let's see here. So they play. My apologies for not having this already pulled up. So yeah, next week they play the Dallas Cowboys, which we'll talk about them in a bit. Then they play the Patriots at home. Zach Wilson has always struggled against Belichick defenses. And then they're home again to play the Kansas City Chiefs. Then they head to Denver. Then they're home for Philly again. Then they play the Giants. And then they're home again against the Chargers, Raiders, Bills again, Dolphins, Falcons. This is a tough schedule, man. And you felt okay with that with Aaron Rodgers. But Aaron Rodgers isn't going to be there. And it sucks, man. And as far as for Aaron Rodgers, I feel so bad for him because he looked like he was having the time of his life. He looked invested. He looked ready to go. And now his season's over. And possibly even his career is over. And you don't ever want to hope that, I mean, nobody hopes that his career is over, but you just look at this and you're like, it's a 39-year-old quarterback. He was getting a little banged up even last year in Green Bay. Now you're dealing with a situation where he's a 39-year-old quarterback with a torn Achilles, which is tough for even athletes in their prime to come back from. let alone a guy that's about to turn 40 next year. So there is a strong possibility that we just saw Aaron Rodgers play his last NFL football game. And that I don't want that to be the case, but there's a strong chance that we probably just did. And I feel bad for him more than anything, because as much as, kind of we shat on him with, drawing this out with the whole drama with the Packers and all that stuff, he's still one of the best talents at the quarterback position we have ever seen. It has been an absolute privilege to get to see him play. And I really hope this is not how we see the last of him. I really don't. But yeah, finally we got that out of the way. It felt weird not bringing that up first, because it is the big story coming out of this morning. But let's try and get a little more positive. Let's try and get a little more positive, man. Let's talk about all these other week 1 games I really want to talk about, starting with opening night, because we didn't get to talk about opening night. Detroit taking on the defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. The Detroit Lions walking in to the proverbial Lions' den and not their own in Arrowhead, taking on the defending Super Bowl champions. Granted, without Travis Kelce, without Chris Jones, but it doesn't matter. They're still playing against Patrick Mahomes. They're still the defending Super Bowl champions. They're still the team that won 2 Super Bowls in the last 4 years, been to 3 in the last 4 years. This is still the Kansas City Chiefs. And they walked in and beat them in their house. Now, granted, it wasn't the most pretty game in the world. Detroit was not perfect on either side of the ball. Their defense looked relatively good. I still believe that if Travis Kelce played, that Kansas City most likely would have won. Detroit only won 21-20. I do firmly believe that if Travis Kelce played, that it would have been a different ball game and Kansas City would have won. But that's out of Detroit's hands. You play who's put in front of you, and they played who was put in front of them, and they beat who was in front of them. And, the Lions' offense was not as good as, I expected them to be. Again, that's a lot of week 1 things. Jameson Williams is still not there. A lot of these guys didn't play in the preseason, so they're still getting acclimated to game speed. So there is still room of improvement for their offense. But Kansas City, they shot themselves in the foot a lot with, Kadarius Toney played probably the worst game I have ever seen a wide receiver play. 5 targets, 3 drops, 0 catches, and 1 drop that was deflected into the air that led to a pick 6 for the rookie Brian Branch. And it was a bad one. You saw the still shot where it was like the ball hit him right in the hands, like perfectly like this. And the screenshot is still like this, and it says, this play turned into a pick 6, and it's just brutal. Everyone's like, they're saying that he deactivated his Twitter account. Granted, he did that at the start of training camp. He didn't do that after the game, so that's a little not true there. But it was still a horrible night for Kadarius Toney. And Jesus Christ, I hope they address the Jawan Taylor thing. I know it's probably been done to death in the few days since then, but my God, I've never seen, those of you who follow me on Twitter, I was doing a thread in the middle of the game counting how many should have been false starts that were not called on Jawan Taylor. I counted, and I guarantee I missed a few of them, I counted a total of 11. 11 times Jawan Taylor went before the snap of the ball, and it just did not get called. Now, I think it was funny as shit that it got called on the final drive of the game where Kansas City needed to convert and needed to move the ball. That was kind of funny. But, it wasn't even just the uncalled false starts. It was his lining up. He was lining up a full yard off of the line of scrimmage. He was lining up where the fucking tight end should be. It was just And he was doing this all game, and the refs were just not they were just not even acknowledging it. And that was just proof that, like, hey, the rules do not apply to the Kansas City Chiefs. When you are a consistent Super Bowl contending team, when you're in the Super Bowl constantly, we saw this. I could say this as a Patriot fan. We saw this for years in New England, where it's like, hey, if you're that kind of team, the rules just don't apply to you in certain aspects the way, it would to every other team. I don't like that it's like that, but it is like that. So that was a whole thing. Everyone's saying the sky is falling in Kansas City. That's ridiculous. They played against a really good Detroit Lions team that is here to compete and can absolutely compete in the NFC. I don't know if they're a legit Super Bowl team yet, but depending on what happens when they get Jameson Williams back, if he's any good, then I can absolutely see a situation where they can get to a point where they can be a legit contender in the NFC. As far as the Kansas City Chiefs, the Travis Kelce injury isn't much. It was just a hyperextended knee. He'll be back in a couple weeks. And they didn't have Chris Jones, who was in attendance at the stadium while holding out, which was funny. But last night, during Monday Night Football, they got a deal done. They got an extension done. So Chris Jones is back in the building. They finally realized it because they were dashing him. That pass rush for the Kansas City Chiefs on the defensive line was horrendous. I said this in my season previews, that Kansas City defensive line without Chris Jones is one of the worst in the league. And it showed it. They could not get a lick of pressure on Jared Goff. Granted, they were going against an elite offensive line for the Detroit Lions, but still, they couldn't generate any sort of pass rush or any sort of pressure. But great game, great win for Detroit on opening night as like a week one statement. They're going to be a fun team to watch for sure. And Kansas City, relax. They're still going to be the Chiefs. It's only week one. But now let's move on to the Sunday slate of games. Sunday, I'm going to start with another one of these Super Bowl contenders that really underperformed. That's been kind of the theme of week one, was like these NFL elites that were viewed as the elites coming into the year that underperformed in week one to some degree. None underperformed more than the Cincinnati Bengals heading to Cleveland to take on the Cleveland Browns. I mean, there's no other way around it. Joe Burrow played like shit. He was ass in this game. 82 yards passing the entire game after missing all of training camp, all of preseason with the calf strain. And, his first game after just signing that mega contract extension, 5 years, $275 million. And he comes out and lays the biggest of eggs you will ever see from an elite level quarterback. It was horrible. The Bengals as a whole were horrible. Jamar Chase didn't help matters when before the game he was calling the defense for the Browns a bunch of elves. It was just, well, guess what? Those elves kicked your ass. And those elves were all over Joe Burrow. Myles Garrett was eating that offensive line up for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That defense is going to be elite, man. They were one of the worst defensive units last year with Joe Woods. And they bring in Jim Schwartz, which I don't think I've ever seen a bigger upgrade from a coordinator standpoint, going from Joe Woods and his Fangio quarter style defense, which just allows you to just move the ball on them, and upgrading it to Jim Schwartz, who has been one of the better defensive minds in the NFL over the past decade or so. And you saw it instantly. This defense is insane, man. They were getting after it. They were just making Joe Burrow's life a living hell. It was great. It was a great game for the Browns defense. And it resulted in a 24-3 Browns win. Though, I will say, the Browns offense didn't look that great. They had a couple touchdown drives here and there, but they didn't really look like this super explosive unit. Deshaun Watson didn't really have that great of a game, outside of a touchdown run. He didn't have the best game in the world. So, there is definitely some still some rust there with him. But this Browns defense, I'm not worried about this Browns defense whatsoever. But Cincinnati, it was it's kind of been the theme with them over the past couple of years, where they start out really slow, like the first week or two. They might lose them. They start out slow. They don't look that great. And then they eventually get their groove together and, make a run and make it deep into the postseason. So I'm not worried about the Bengals. Like I said, it's only week one. And I feel like I should say that with everything. It's only week one. You can't really say anything about what the rest of the season is going to be like, because it's only the first week of the season. Things can change drastically. But now moving on to a game that I was really anticipating, and a lot of people were really anticipating, that Jordan Love, as I expected, made a lot of people eat a gigantic pile of shit. He took the biggest pile of shit you could possibly find, cut it up into pieces like a cake, and served it to everybody that said that, or just assumed rather, that he was going to be bad. I don't know where this narrative, well, I do know where it came from, that everyone just assumed Jordan Love was going to be bad, or just assumed that he wasn't going to play well, because they spent a first-round pick on him back in 2020, and then Aaron Rodgers won back-to-back MVPs, and everyone was saying, oh, he was bad, he's a bust, even though he never played, and everyone was like, well, he has one career start, and he played like shit. Yeah, he had one career start on a week where Aaron Rodgers got COVID, and so he got put in on a short week, and that first career start was against the Kansas City Chiefs in Arrowhead. So no shit he was going to play bad. But now, and you saw it last year, like in prime time against Philly, the few times he got in like garbage time or whatever, he was slinging it. He looked good. He looked comfortable. And I'm like, that's it. He's going to be good. And I kept saying, he's going to be really good. He's going to be really good. And everyone was like, no, that's ridiculous. He's going to be bad. Like, I'm telling you, this guy's going to be really, really good. And sure enough, he comes out slinging it. I got to find this specific stat line. I don't have the stat line specifically off the top of my head, but he balled out in this game, man. Hold on, my apologies. If it will let me go to it. There we go. Alrighty, there we are. Jordan Love was 15 to 27. Didn't pass the ball that many times. 245 yards with 3 touchdown passes, 0 interceptions. He balled out, man. He absolutely balled out. And they were really nice touchdown passes, too. Like the final touchdown pass to Romeo Doubs was a really nice high-pointed ball in the corner of the end zone where he just let his guy go up and get it. It was a really good game for the Green Bay Packers. And I told you, man, they are going to be a really good team. I said, like, the two teams that I felt like everyone just assumed was going to be bad that are ultimately going to be really, really good this year were the Green Bay Packers and the New England Patriots, who we're going to talk about later. But the Green Bay Packers, I said, like, this is going to be a really good football team, man. They're a defense that on paper should be good, and an offense that I think people are sleeping on. And they proved it. They went out and dominated 38-20 victory over the Bears. And as for the Chicago Bears, like, this game went exactly the opposite of how everybody thought it would. Everyone thought the Bears were going to perform like the way the Packers did, and everyone thought the Packers were going to perform the way the Bears did, and it was just a complete reversal, and it just showed, like, yes, I know I've been saying it's only week one. Things can change, things can happen, things can develop as the season goes on. But through the first week of year 3 now in the Justin Fields experience, he just doesn't look like he's the guy. And like I said, that statement could come back and bite me in the ass. I am fully acknowledging this. But it was rough. He looked like the same timid passer that he's been even last year, where he was holding on to the ball way too long, scrambling when he shouldn't have, not reading the defense well, he threw a pick six to Quay Walker where he threw it straight to him. It was as bad a performance as you could possibly imagine a quarterback could have. Actually, it was the second worst performance a quarterback could possibly have. The first worst we'll talk about later at the end of this stream, but Justin Fields was just it was brutal, man. And everyone was saying, it was a different supporting cast now. They brought in DJ Moore. They didn't tweak the offensive line as much as I hoped. But it was like, hey, it doesn't matter because, hey, this receiving core should be really good for him. He should take the step. Everyone was saying, like, this is the time for him to take that Jalen Hurts-esque leap into year 3 the way Jalen Hurts did. The difference is Jalen Hurts, we've seen this from his days in Alabama, through Oklahoma, through the NFL. Jalen Hurts just has this batshit crazy work ethic where he just got significantly better every single year. And I'm not saying Justin Fields doesn't have this incredible work ethic, but, it doesn't look like, from a passing standpoint, it doesn't look like he's improved that much. And if he's struggling this early on, and again, I know it's week 1, things can change and he can get more comfortable, but so far, after one game, it doesn't look good, man. And there's a potential where if this keeps up, that will be the nail in the coffin in saying, all right, Justin Fields is not the guy. It's time to move on. And he would just be another footnote in why you don't fully draft Ohio State quarterbacks. Because, things are too easy for them in college and it doesn't translate all that well to the NFL level because they have all this elite talent around them where the game is easy on them. And then they get to the NFL and it's nothing. So, like I said, it's only week 1. We'll see how the season for him progresses, but after week 1, it does not look good for him whatsoever. And then we're going to talk about this game. Philadelphia at New England. This was a much better game than, honestly, even I was anticipating for. I expected New England to put up a little bit of a fight, but they were in it, man. They had a chance to win it at the end there. There were a couple plays where you're like, well, the 4th down late in the game, but it's like coulda, shoulda, woulda, context going for it, down by 8 at the 17-yard line. You could have just kicked the field goal, but hindsight, I didn't mind the call. You didn't know you were going to get that chance again. But, this is I'll start with New England. This is a really good game for the Patriots. And this was sort of like, moral victories are sort of like iffy in the NFL. But this was as close to a moral victory as you could possibly get if you're the New England Patriots. Everyone was saying that this offense was still going to be as bad as they were last year. And they didn't, man. It started out like that. That first quarter was brutal. They were down 16-0. The offense couldn't do anything. Mac Jones threw a pick six, though. It wasn't a great throw, but, it was still like it bounced off of Kendrick Bourne's hands, and Darius Slay picked it and returned it for a touchdown. It was a kind of a fluky thing like that. Still wasn't a great throw, but still kind of fluky. And they got into a 16-0 hole. But then, middle of the second quarter, they got into it. They went down the field, scored a touchdown. Defense forced a 3-and-out. They went down the field, got another touchdown. They were down 2 points going into halftime. And they were in it, man. The defense played really, really well against a really good Eagle offense. And the offense looked significantly improved. Mac Jones had over 300 yards passing. He passed the ball for, 54 times, 3 touchdown passes, and were a Kayshon Boutte missed toe tap away from potentially winning this game. And that's another thing, Kayshon. It's not college anymore. You got to get both feet in bounds, man. And this was a really good game. And New England was in it. And this was a statement that's like, no, we're a really good football team. And we can compete we can go compete and go toe to toe with the big dogs in not just the AFC, but the big dogs in the NFL. They are a good enough team to do that. But, it'll be kind of like the Detroit Lions of last year early on, where it's like, yeah, you're in it, but at some point, I will say, like, at some point, the wins just got to start coming. They got to find a way to actually close out these games. It's like, you can't just say, like, oh, but we were in it, we were close. At some point, that's going to wear thin, and you got to be like, all right, but now we got to get over that hump. And, they got to be more consistent. They got to not get into a 16-point hole early on. But all in all, this was as close to a moral victory as you can get. And they're going to have a tough outing next week because they're playing against the Miami Dolphins on Sunday Night Football, and we will get to them in a little bit. But as far as the Philadelphia Eagles go, again, this is another one of those things where it's like they didn't perform as well as maybe you would have hoped they would have. But it was still a situation where that defense still looks really, really good. Jalen Carter looks like a monster, as we expected him to. That defense still looks really good. The offense can still move the ball really effectively. This is still a good Eagles team that I'm not worried about. They're still one of the best teams in football. And they just went against a really good Belichick defense and a Patriot offense that, I think a lot of people underestimated. But all in all, they squeaked out the win. And that was sort of like a sigh of relief. Now let's just get the ball rolling again and go back to playing the dominant football that this team can absolutely play. Now let's talk about who New England's opponent for next week is going to be. And that is the Miami Dolphins taking on the Los Angeles Chargers in a game that went exactly how we all expected it to be. This was an absolute shootout. It was an aerial attack. It was so fun to watch. Tua Tagovailoa went absolutely insane. Tyreek Hill went absolutely insane. I got to pull up their specific numbers because me just throwing out the estimate will not do this team justice. Hold on one moment. Here we are. Tua Tagovailoa went 28 of 45 for 466 yards, 3 touchdowns to 1 interception. And Tyreek Hill had 11 catches for 215 and 2 touchdowns. He averaged 19.5 yards per reception. This was a clinic. This was an offensive and passing clinic. Mike McDaniel is insane as a play designer, a play caller, and he has probably the most accurate quarterback in the NFL. As much as we like to rip on Tua sometimes, being like, oh, noodle arm and shit like that, he's arguably the most accurate quarterback in the NFL. Match that up with probably the deadliest weapon in the NFL in Tyreek Hill, who is the best receiver in all of football. It is a sight to behold. And they have asserted themselves as after week 1, they are definitely the team to beat in the AFC East. And they're a team that can absolutely compete. Vic Fangio's defense was a little suspect in this game. They didn't look that good. I expect Fangio to eventually get it together and figure out, all right, how to utilize the pieces that he has to the best of their ability. And not having Jalen Ramsey for the first couple months of the season is definitely going to hinder the upside of this defense. But all in all, I'm not worried about Vic Fangio and coordinating this defense. And I'm damn sure not worried about this offense. This offense looks just as electric as we expect them to be. And then as far as the Chargers, they look better offensively. I mean, they've always been this really explosive team, this big play team. Though Kellen Moore, I don't think their new offensive coordinator hasn't really pushed the needle that much as some people might have thought he would have. But yeah, Brandon Staley is still I still think he's on the hot seat because, you got hired as a defensive coach, and your defense played like shit. Granted, against an incredible Dolphin offense, but you're the defensive mind. You're a defensive guru. This is your thing. What the fuck? What the fuck do you do? So, I don't know what's up with him, bro, but yeah, man. That's all I have to say about that. There's really nothing else to say other than the Dolphins are just as good as we expect them to be on offense, and they are going to be absolutely stellar. And then the final afternoon game, the second to last game we're going to talk about, the Rams and the Seahawks. The Seahawks really underperformed compared to how I expected them to be. They did not play well in that second half, and losing not one but both of your starting tackles absolutely hurts. This is a team that Geno Smith is still, not the biggest upside guy in the world. So having him in a situation where both of his starting tackles are out, going against a pass rush that was much better than I expected it to be. By the way, I'm sure you guys have seen it at this point with Aaron Donald, where Geno Smith snapped the ball and Aaron Donald just burst through free, and the audio picked up of Geno Smith going, "Oh my God!" He just threw the ball into the dirt. That was hilarious, and it's an appropriate response. That's an appropriate response when Aaron Donald is running free straight at you at full speed. So, but on a serious note, the passing game for Seattle fizzled out. Geno just couldn't stay upright. They got pressure on him throughout almost the entire second half. We'll see how serious the injuries to Cross and Abraham Lucas are. And that could really put a limit on what this Seahawks team can be. And then as far as the Rams, welcome back Matthew Stafford. I will admit, I was lower on Matthew Stafford because I thought he wasn't going to be the same Matthew Stafford of old, coming off a down year, coming off the injury. He came out and he balled out, man. Didn't throw a touchdown pass, but he looked incredible still. Puka Nacua looks like an incredible find in the draft. Tutu Atwell looks like a good deep threat. I had a lot of questions about him because of his size, but he looks like he could be a really explosive player. And they didn't even have Cooper Kupp in this game. Imagine what this offense can look like when Cooper Kupp comes back. With Tutu Atwell playing well, Puka Nacua looking like a good player. How Van Jefferson fits into all that. All of a sudden, the Rams can be cooking again, and Sean McVay looks like an excellent coach again. So I will eat my words. I thought the Rams were going to be one of the bottom feeders, and they proved that, no, man, they could still compete with the big boys if need be. So I'm really excited to see how that performs going forward in the season. And then finally, we have to talk about it. This is the game where something happened with my stream, but like I said, that was for the better. Because this was one of the worst football games I've ever seen. I'm, of course, talking about the Dallas Cowboys heading to MetLife to take on the New York Giants. And, oh, God, hold on, because my laptop is about to die. Let me plug this in real quick. And then this may or may not be me delaying the inevitable of talking about this. Where the fuck do I even start with this game? So, I'll just talk about the positives first. Dallas's defense is insane. Micah Parsons is still a game wrecker. Dan Quinn knows how to coordinate a defense. This is a Super Bowl elite caliber defense. The Cowboys' offense looked fine. They didn't look super explosive, but they were still able to perform. and score when need be. They were able to move the ball rather effectively when they needed to. So the Cowboys look really good. All right, now let's talk about the negatives here. Daniel Jones is a $160 million quarterback. And I don't know how to feel about that. It's almost like the Giants had the ultimate karma because they chose to pay Daniel Jones all that money and not Saquon Barkley. And Saquon did not have a great game either. But it was almost like the football gods are like, really? You looked at Daniel Jones and said that he was worth $45 million a year? Really? And it looked fine on the opening drive. They moved the ball down the field. Daniel Jones was using his legs. He was picking up first downs. They looked good. And then a bad snap pushes them back for a field goal attempt. And then everything just went to shit. The Cowboys block a field goal. Noah Benogany scoops it up and takes it back for a touchdown. And then the Giants just could not recover. They just completely laid down and died in the pouring rain. It just looked like shit. It looked horrible. It was horrific. I went into a state of depression watching that game. And the stream didn't even go live for that game. So I felt like I just wasted 3 hours of my life. I wanted to cry after that night was over. Because that was the most miserable viewing experience of my life. And the Giants just... I did not expect a Brian Daboll-led offense to look that horrendous. And I also had this theory that I think Brian Daboll, and I saw a few other people on Twitter also had the same exact theory. I think Brian Daboll hates Daniel Jones. Because if you saw at the start of the fourth quarter, they had pulled most of their starters. Like, they had pulled Saquon out the game. They pulled the receivers out the game. But Daniel Jones was still in there. He was still in there, and he was still trying to move the ball on offense. And I'm just sitting there. I'm like, why the hell is he in this game? Does Brian Daboll really hate Daniel? Does he resent the Giants front offense for paying him that much? And it was almost hilarious to a degree, where I was like, oh my God, this offense sucks. It's horrible. And again, I didn't expect that out of a Brian Daboll-led offense. And I don't know. Hopefully, we'll say like, oh, but they were in the rain. It was a rain game, and everything just went bad. They couldn't perform well in the rain. The Cowboys are playing in that same rain, man. Hopefully, that's not... Hopefully, this offense doesn't look that bad. I can't imagine they look this bad the rest of the year. They were playing against a great Cowboys defense. I don't anticipate them to look that bad the rest of the year. I expect Brian Daboll to get their shit together and perform well as the year goes on. But it was not good. This was not a good game. This was not a good situation. And we'll see how they improve, if they can improve. This was the definition of a game where you can only go up from here. You can't possibly go lower than this. There's no feasible way in hell you can go lower than the New York Giants went in this game. So yeah, I feel like that's all there is to say about that. And man, I don't like how we have to end this stream on a depressing note, talking about this depressing-ass New York Giant football team. Hopefully they get better. Hopefully it improves. But man, this was a rough first week for the New York Giants. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is your week 1 recap. And hopefully week 2 gets a little less sloppy. You know, that was the main thing. Everything was kind of sloppy week 1. Hopefully week 2 is not that sloppy. Hopefully some of the narratives that we got coming out of week 1 about some of the best teams in football, don't continue to be that way going into week 2. If some of the narratives we had about these teams from week 1 continue after week 2, now it's a situation where we might be a little bit concerned potentially. But that is week 1 in the books. Week 2, we'll see what that gets. We'll see how that is. And with that being said, I'm Double Diesel.